Better luck next time. That was my son's gift from his grandparents for Christmas 2 years ago. They thought it was just a harmless joke, but it ended all ties between me and them. Some people who've been through similar situations stood by me, while others said I was overreacting. But honestly, I didn't care what they said. I chose to protect my son. Now, hear my story, and tell me, was I wrong to cut all ties with my family to protect my child? Hi everyone, my name's David. I'm 32 years old and live in northern Denver, Colorado. I work as a systems engineer for a renewable energy company. My wife, Lauren, is an elementary school teacher, and we have a 9-year-old son named Ethan. Our life right now, to put it simply, is peaceful and happy. We live in a small house with a backyard big enough to pitch a tent every summer weekend and a corner in the living room just for Ethan to display his little space models. Every morning, I drop Ethan off at school. My wife teaches first grade at a nearby school. We have dinner together in the evenings, then play Uno or watch cartoons as a family. It's not fancy. It's not complicated. But it's a good life, a life worth living. That said, if someone were to ask me about my parents, I'd only have one answer: they're dead. I know, that answer tends to catch people off guard. They'll blink a few times, say, "I'm so sorry," then quickly change the subject. But the truth is, my parents are very much alive. They're healthy. I'm still living in this same city. They didn't die, at least not physically. But to me, they've been dead since 2 years ago. On a Christmas night, I wish I could erase from memory. I know it sounds harsh. Cutting off your parents isn't something most people would ever consider. But if you had seen the look of fear in my son's eyes, just 7 years old, when he opened a Christmas gift from Grandpa and Grandma and found a cold little note inside that read, "Better luck next time," maybe you'd understand. I'm not sharing this story for sympathy. I'm sharing it because sometimes the worst pain doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the very people we call family. Lauren, Ethan, and I were still living with my parents 2 years ago. Ethan was just 7 then, still afraid of thunderstorms, clinging to his stuffed bear at night, and always excitedly talking about the yellow school bus with the window seat. We lived upstairs in the 2-story house I'd grown up in. It was a spacious, quiet neighborhood, and our offices were less than a 15-minute drive away. On paper, it seemed like the perfect setup, affordable, convenient, close to family. But that was only on paper. Lauren and I covered nearly every household expense, over $3,000 a month. Rent, electricity, water, cable, Wi-Fi, gas, groceries, even down to the little things like tissues, hand soap, or replacing a burnt-out light bulb in the living room. If something new showed up in that house, whether it was a coffee maker or a new TV remote, chances were we paid for it. But to my parents, it was like none of it even existed. They never brought it up. I never said thank you. The only person who did get mentioned, always with pride in their eyes, was my younger brother, Kevin. Kevin's a civil engineer who works out of town. He stops by once a month, sometimes every other month. When he comes home, he might bring a box of cookies from the airport or a t-shirt with a sports team logo for my dad. Sometimes, he drops off $200 in an envelope with a quick note. "Super busy, just sending a little something for you guys." And somehow, that was enough. Enough for my parents to brag about him to the entire extended family. Enough for my mom to start a group video call with all the aunts, talking about how Kevin is thoughtful, so filial, and, even though he's swamped with work, he still thinks about us. Then came Christmas that year, a time I thought might bring us closer again. I told Lauren, "It's the holidays. Let's keep the peace." We bought gifts for everyone, helped Ethan make a little handwritten card for his grandparents. He was so excited the whole week, counting down the days until Christmas Eve, so he could eat turkey and open presents like every year. Honestly, I was hopeful too, but life doesn't always follow the script. And that every year, I tried so hard to hold on to, it ended that very night. Christmas dinner 2 years ago started just fine. No big party, no extended family, just 6 adults and 3 kids. My family, my parents, Kevin's family, my younger brother. Mom had gone out with the meal like every other year. Roasted turkey, mashed potatoes, pumpkin pie, and a mountain of gingerbread cookies stacked on a platter. The Christmas tree stood in its usual corner of the living room, decked out with the same old ornaments that Mom, Kevin, and I had hung up since we were little. Everything looked peaceful, cozy, like a picture-perfect family scene on a cold December night. That evening, Ethan wore the Christmas sweater my mom had given him the year before. He sat curled up next to Lauren, his eyes locked on the pile of presents under the tree. Kevin and his wife were all smiles, chatting about his latest project, occasionally leaning over to fuss with their twin boys playing in the snow on the balcony. After dinner, my dad stood up and clapped his hands. Time for presents. There's a twist this year. If you've been good, you might get a surprise gift. The kids cheered. Mom came out of the back room carrying a big gift bag, handing them out individually. Kevin's boys got huge boxes wrapped in shiny paper with bright yellow ribbons. They tore them open. One got a car building set, the other a voice-controlled robot. Their squeals of joy echoed through the room. I glanced at Ethan. He was still sitting quietly, but his hands were rubbing together, and there was a flicker of hope in his eyes. Then my dad called his name. Ethan, here's yours. A small box was handed to him, gray wrapping paper. No ribbon. Ethan took it gently, carefully peeling off the tape as if he didn't want to damage whatever was inside. I pulled out my phone, ready to capture the moment he lit up excitedly. But as he unwrapped the last layer, I saw him freeze. Inside the box, there was nothing. Nothing but a single folded piece of paper. He opened it and read out loud before he even realized what it said. Better luck next time. No toy, no candy, no card, just that. A single line like some punishment. Right after Ethan read, better luck next time, the room fell into a heavy silence. For a few long seconds, no one said a word. The only sound was the crackle of the fireplace in the corner, and Ethan's small hands clutching that piece of paper like he was trying to hold on to something that had just been stolen from him. At that moment, I shot to my feet. It felt like a cold surge of electricity ran straight down my spine. My chest tightened. I couldn't breathe, like the air got stuck in my throat. I looked straight at my parents, my voice low but sharp, every word cutting. What the hell is this? Who thought this was funny? Ethan was still sitting there, head down. His shoulders trembled. He looked up at me. Those eyes. The eyes of a child who'd just been hurt and couldn't understand why. My hands balled into fists, nails digging into my palms. Then my dad shrugged, not even bothering to look up. He raised his glass of brandy and said like it was nothing. Your kid's been disrespectful lately. This was just a little lesson. I froze, not because I was surprised, but because I couldn't believe he said that so casually. I snapped back. A lesson? You think humiliating a kid before the whole family is a lesson? Right then, my mom cut in, her voice flat and cold as ice. David, children need to learn their place. You can't always spoil them or give them everything they want. I turned to Lauren. She was holding Ethan's hand tightly. Her face had gone pale, lips pressed together. Her eyes were glassy, red, like she held back tears so Ethan wouldn't see. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. Her eyes said everything. My mom looked at me like I was the one ruining Christmas. She added, "You always overreact. You're too sensitive. Kevin never gives us this kind of trouble." There it was again. Kevin. As soon as she said his name, I felt my head heat up, like someone had their hands squeezing both sides of my skull. Then, trying to break the tension, Kevin chimed in, his tone fake calm but laced with smugness. Chill out, man. It was just a joke. No need to blow it out of proportion. His wife sat next to him, hand over her mouth like she was shocked. But her eyes? There was something in them. Something that looked an awful lot like satisfaction. At that exact moment, it became crystal clear. No one in that room was on my side. No one was on Ethan's side. And I felt like I was standing in a stranger's house. A house I used to call home. Something in me just snapped. I clenched my jaw. My whole body tensed like I was holding back a scream. And all I could hear in my head was one sentence, over and over. They're not your family anymore. And I knew right then, we had to leave. Tonight. Right after Kevin finished speaking, I turned to Lauren. She didn't need to say a word. I could see it in her eyes. I had the same thought. I bent down and took Ethan's hand. His tiny hand was still cold and sweaty. Then I held Lauren's hand tight. My voice was low but clear enough for everyone in the room to hear. We're leaving. And just like that, we walked out the door. We didn't take anything with us. Just the silence and a little boy who had just learned what it feels like to be hurt. In the car, Ethan sat quietly in the back seat, hugging the spaceship-shaped pillow he'd brought from home. He didn't cry, but I knew. Deep inside, something had shattered that no one could see. I turned the wheel and softly said, "Let's go get dinner." Lauren looked at me, a bit surprised. Then she nodded. About 20 minutes later, We pulled up in front of a little Italian restaurant. The kind Lauren loves. The kind we usually save for special occasions. I wasn't trying to make a statement. I wasn't trying to pretend everything was okay. I just wanted Ethan to know one thing. A cheap piece of paper didn't define his worth. And it sure as hell wasn't defined by how badly someone else treated him. While Lauren helped him pick something from the menu, I excused myself to make a phone call and stepped away momentarily. I crossed the street to a small gift shop nearby, one I'd walked past a few weeks ago, where I'd seen a kid's watch in the window, a navy blue watch, planets on the face, and a tiny spaceship ticking around as the second hand. Precisely the thing Ethan would go crazy over. I bought it, had it wrapped quickly, and headed back to the table like I'd never left. I sat down, placed the gift box on the table, and slid it toward Ethan. "Hey, buddy, I think you deserve this." He hesitated for a second before opening it. When he saw the watch, his eyes lit up, wide with wonder, like an entire galaxy had just sparked inside him. He didn't say anything. He just looked at me, then launched into my arms and hugged me tightly. And right then, for the first time that night, I could finally breathe. After dinner, we didn't head back home. Instead, I drove us to a small hotel near downtown. Not fancy, but quiet and clean. I booked a room with 3 beds, one with a window overlooking snow-covered streets. Ethan gave a small cheer when he saw the thick blanket covered in stars and moons. Like a little piece of his world had been restored. About an hour later, Ethan drifted off to sleep. He held his new watch tightly, curled up like a kitten. His breathing was soft and steady. Like in sleep, he could momentarily forget everything that had happened. I leaned back against the headboard, my body stiff with tension. Lauren lay next to me, unable to sleep as well. After a while, Lauren turned to me. She whispered, her voice rough from holding back emotion. "I've had enough, David. We need our own home." I turned to her, our eyes met. No more words were needed. I nodded, not out of anger, not out of pride, but because I knew that if we didn't leave, if we didn't build a real home of our own, Ethan, that innocent child, would grow up trapped in the same toxic environment I had once been imprisoned in. The following day, as the winter sunlight crept through the hotel's window blinds, I stepped out onto the balcony with my phone in hand. I called Jordan, my close friend from college. We'd been dorm roommates our first year, and though we'd gone our separate ways after that, our friendship never faded. Jordan was now a real estate agent specializing in residential properties around Denver. The moment he answered, I didn't beat around the bush. "I need a house. Nothing big. It's just something affordable. But I need it as soon as possible." Jordan stayed silent for a few seconds before speaking softly. "What happened?" I didn't reply. I just took a deep breath, steadying my voice. Jordan didn't press further. In the way that old friends seem to understand, he continued, "Okay, please give me your budget. I'll find something decent within 3 days." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Thanks." I hung up and stood there for a few more minutes. The cold wind stung my face, but inside, it felt like I'd finally cast off some rusty old chains that had bound me for years. That same morning, after my call with Jordan, I drove straight to Uncle Glenn's small office. He owned the house my family was renting. Uncle Glenn looked up as I walked in. He looked older than I remembered, more gray in his hair, but his eyes were just as sharp as when we first met to sign the lease 6 years ago. I sat down across from him, keeping my tone steady. "I need to update the rental information. Starting next month, the lease will be under my parents' names. I won't be covering it anymore since we've moved out and don't live there anymore." Uncle Glenn looked at me momentarily as if deciding whether to ask something. Then he nodded. No questions. He pulled a form from his desk drawer and handed it to me to sign. His movements were calm and quick, as if this moment had been prepared long ago. I took the pen and signed. The whole thing was over in less than 5 minutes. When I exited his office, I paused momentarily in front of the door, drawing a deep breath. Not to summon courage, but to say goodbye to a part of my past I had held onto for far too long. The following day, my phone rang as I was getting Ethan ready for school. The sky was still overcast from a light overnight snowfall. Lauren was pouring coffee in the kitchen, and Ethan was bent over, tying his shoelaces. I glanced at the screen. It was my mom. I already knew what it was about, and I wasn't wrong. Uncle Glenn must have told them I'd stopped covering the rent starting next month. I picked up, and her voice came through instantly. Fast, sharp, and so familiar that it sent a chill down my spine as if someone had dumped ice on my neck. "What the hell are you doing? cutting us off without saying a word to your parents. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight in my chest like a stone lodged inside. My voice was low and firm when I answered, I'm not living there anymore. You'll have to handle it yourselves from now on. There was a brief pause on the other end. Then she spoke again, her words deliberate and hard. Then don't come crying to me, David. Don't blame anyone when the door slams in your face. I pressed my lips together, my free hand clutching the car keys in my pocket, steadying myself so I wouldn't shake angrily. But I didn't say anything else. I thought it was over at that point. It wasn't. I heard my dad's voice next, low, steady, colder than the snow outside. If it's not you, we've got Kevin. We don't need anyone else. After that, I let out a soft laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was bitter. Is that so? I said, my tone unervingly calm. Well, let's see who Kevin takes care of. I hung up right then. My thumb lingered for a moment on the button, as if to make sure I didn't want to hear another word. About a week after my last call with my parents, Jordan texted me an address along with a brief message. I think you should check this one out first. That morning, I took a half day off work. The three of us, Lauren, Ethan, and I, went to see the house. It was tucked away in a quiet suburb on the south side of town. Sunlight poured through the living room into the kitchen, filtering through simple white curtains and spilling onto the warm wooden floors. The backyard was just big enough for a small table and chairs, with a patch of grass where Ethan could play, plant a garden, or set up a tent on weekends. The homeowner, a sweet, silver-haired older woman, heard our story and immediately agreed to let us move in early while we completed the loan paperwork. There is no strict screening, no suspicion, just a quiet trust between strangers, something I had rarely felt, even with my own family. As we crossed the threshold, Lauren froze in the small kitchen. She raised a hand to her mouth. Then she cried, not because the house was beautiful, but because, for the first time in years, she felt like she was walking into a place that truly belonged to her. I wrapped my arms around her, saying nothing, just holding her tight as if to say, we're okay now. Ethan darted through the rooms, from the tiny bedroom with a window overlooking a red maple tree to the living room, where he planned to build a space station out of chairs and blankets. He laughed. A bright, ringing laugh like popcorn in a microwave. His cheeks flushed, and he ran barefoot across the cool floor without feeling the chill. Standing there in that empty room, watching my wife wipe away tears, hearing my son's laughter echoing through the house, I felt a lump rise in my throat. Not from sadness, relief. I knew this time that I had made the right choice. Not just choosing a house, choosing freedom, choosing love, choosing a real family. About a month after we moved into our new home, I got a call from Mom while I was picking Ethan up from his art class. I answered but didn't say anything at first. On the other end, her voice came through, shaky, choked up, like she'd been holding back tears for a long time. David, we can't afford the rent. They're about to evict us. Right after she said that, I could hear her labored breathing, as if speaking was causing her pain. But I also heard something else. Her panic didn't come from remorse but fear. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. Sitting in the back seat flipping through a new sketchbook, Ethan was too absorbed to notice how my expression was shifting by the second. I inhaled slowly, keeping my voice steady even though it felt like a storm was raging inside me. Then I asked her, my tone cold and deliberate, "Where's Kevin?" There was nothing but silence on the other end. I heard a few broken sniffles but no answer. No explanation. Just silence. And that silence suddenly set off my fury, not because they were struggling, but because they still thought I was the backup plan. I spoke through gritted teeth, each word sharp as a blade. "Go ask your perfect son." Then I hung up. My hand still trembled slightly on the wheel. I didn't feel hurt anymore for the first time in years, just tired. A quiet, overwhelming exhaustion that had built up over too many repeated disappointments. 2 days after that tear-filled call, around 7 p.m., my doorbell rang long, urgent bursts. It was already dark out. The porch light had just clicked on. Lauren was at the sink washing dishes while I sat in the corner of the living room, editing a few report files for my boss. Ethan was sprawled out on the carpet, piecing together a model spaceship. At first, I thought it might be a neighbor stopping by, but the persistent ringing, mixed with heavy, deliberate knocks, tightened my chest. I moved to the window and peeked through the curtain. My heart sank. Kevin, my mom, my dad, all three stood on my doorstep, caught in the golden glow of the porch light. Kevin was in the center, still holding his car keys. My mom dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. My dad stood there, arms crossed, his cold gaze steady as the ice slowly melted. I didn't open the door. I just stood there watching silently. Then they started shouting, "David, open the door. We're family. You can't treat your parents this way. Please, I'm begging you." Inside, Ethan stood up, ready to run over. But Lauren caught his arm in time. She looked at me, steady, unwavering, as if to say, "Don't let them near him." I gave her a slight nod. Then I pulled out my phone and dialed the local police. My voice was calm, clear, without a hint of shaking. "Hello? 3 people are banging on my door and demanding to enter. I'm not allowing them in. This is my home, and I need assistance immediately." About 15 minutes later, a patrol car arrived. 2 officers stepped out and told them to leave. My mom cried, pleading about something. My dad stayed silent, but I noticed his hands clenched tight. Kevin, however, kept his composure. Before returning to the car, he looked straight at me through the glass, his eyes alight with anger. He spoke slowly, enunciating every word. "You're ungrateful." I didn't respond. I just stood there, hands still resting on the lock. Part of me wanted to laugh, not out of spite, but because I'd grown so accustomed to this role. I was at fault, simply because I refused to be walked on. About 3 days after the police escorted them off my property, I received a message from an old college friend. "Hey, you doing okay? What's going on with your family? I saw your brother posted this on Reddit." He followed up with a link. I frowned and clicked it. It was a Reddit post, listed under family drama, currently trending at the top. The title read, "When money changes a person and my brother David Miller kicked our parents out." I started reading. In the post, Kevin used carefully crafted language, enough to sway public opinion. That I was someone who had gotten rich quick and then turned my back on my roots. That my parents were elderly folks who just wanted a place to stay, but were thrown out into the freezing winter night. He had tried to reconcile, but was met with me, slamming the door and calling the cops. He didn't mention the Christmas box. He didn't mention the cold, dismissive note. He didn't mention the years I carried the financial burden for the entire family. The post included a short video Kevin had taken from outside my house, showing the police telling my parents to leave. I saw that the post had already been shared thousands of times. Many comments were already attacking me. This kind of person doesn't deserve parents. Someone who gets successful and then turns their back is the worst kind of scum. No one should kick their parents out onto the street. I froze for a moment. The first thing I felt wasn't anger but exhaustion. An overwhelming, bone-deep weariness. After Kevin's post, I didn't get angry. I didn't jump into the comments to argue with strangers. I reopened the one video I'd recorded that Christmas, the only video from that night and the only one that mattered. In it, Ethan sits clutching the gift from his grandparents, excited like any child would be. He opens it and freezes. Inside, there's just a piece of paper. And when he reads it aloud, "Better luck next time." I swear, I'd never seen my son's eyes look so sad. I uploaded the clip to Reddit. No caption. No sensational title. There is no added context. Just the video speaks for itself. Then, I returned to Kevin's post, his carefully crafted sob story about me throwing our parents out, and left a single comment with a link. "This is the gift my son received." Reddit exploded. The video spread faster than I expected. Thousands watched, shared, and asked, "What's going on here? Why would they give a child a gift like that? What were they thinking, doing this to their grandson?" Relatives started texting me. People who had been silent and assumed I was in the wrong began writing things like, "I'm sorry for misunderstanding. I had no idea it was like this." They crossed the line. My friends didn't say much. They shared the video, leaving comments like, "No need for more words," or "Watch this and you'll get it." The online community turned against Kevin and my parents. Some even dug up old posts from my mom, posts where she bragged about Kevin being dutiful, successful, and always thinking of his family, and left icy replies. "Yeah, thinking of his family like this. What kind of grandparents do this to a kid? No wonder the brother chose to walk away." I didn't respond to anyone. I didn't feel vindicated. I just sat there, silently reading each comment. After things had settled down online the following day, I called my attorney. I didn't say much. I just sent over everything. The video, Kevin's post, the edited clip, the vicious comments, and screenshots of the relatives' messages turning against me. A few hours later, he sent back a draft complaint. It was concise, clear, and without a single unnecessary word. That week, I worked closely with him to finalize the filing. Defamation, spreading false information, personal character assassination. Every allegation was carefully laid out, each piece of evidence meticulously organized. When I reviewed it for the last time, I nodded slightly. My nose stung a bit, not from anger but from a sense of relief. It was as if someone was finally naming, out loud, the wrongs I had endured. From that moment on, this was no longer a family matter. No more misunderstandings between relatives. No more, but he's your brother. Nothing like that. Just the law. And Kevin now would face court. In the days that followed, I didn't write anything more. I didn't speak out. I didn't defend myself. I let it all settle like calm water after a storm. 2 months after filing, Kevin officially received the court summons. At the preliminary hearing, my lawyer presented all the evidence. The original Christmas video, Kevin's Reddit post, the deliberately edited clip, the inflammatory comments from his account, and an analysis of the spread of false information across social media. Kevin had no rebuttal. His face paled as the court read through each charge: defamation, spreading false information, and publicly tarnishing another's reputation. 1 month later, the court delivered its verdict. Kevin was ordered to publicly apologize on every platform where he had spread the falsehoods: Reddit, Facebook, Instagram. The court wrote the content of the apology, and he was prohibited from editing it or removing it for 6 months. He was also required to pay $43,000 in damages, covering legal fees, reputational harm, and emotional distress. The amount was due within 30 days. If unpaid, the court reserved the right to seize his assets. Finally, Kevin was barred from any form of repeat behavior. If he posted about me or my family again, anonymously or through another account, the penalty would double and the subsequent lawsuit would be criminal. After that trial, I completely cut ties. I blocked all communication from my family. My parents, Kevin, and even my closest relatives. I didn't want to hear another word. No apologies, no explanations. I truly believed that between me and them, it was all over. I also believed I'd never have to mention their names again. But then, a week ago, my phone rang. It was my aunt. Her name popped up on the screen. I stared at it for a few seconds before picking it up. On the other end, her voice was much lower than the last time I'd heard it. "David, your mother's in the hospital. The doctor says she's very weak. Not sure if she'll make it. She wants to see her grandson. And you." I didn't reply right away. I stood leaning against the edge of the workbench in the garage. My hand gripped the edge. Not tightly, but just enough to feel the cold. In my mind, I didn't picture my mother in the hospital. I pictured my son, 2 years ago, sitting on the floor beneath the Christmas tree, his hands shaking as he read, "Better luck next time." I drew in a long, deep breath and answered slowly. "Tell her, my wife and son died. They died that Christmas Eve." I didn't wait a second longer. I hung up the phone, and I returned to work as if that call had never happened. Since that Christmas Eve, they were no longer my family. This last call only reinforced one thing for me. I had made the right choice. Family isn't always the people who share your blood. Family is where love, respect, and safety await you when you come home. If someone uses the word family to hold you hostage, to control you, to trample on your dignity, to hurt children just because they don't fit their expectations, then they're no longer family. I didn't lose anyone. I just left behind those who never truly loved me. And that's not a loss. That's freedom. And before closing this chapter, I want to ask you one thing. Was I wrong or right to walk away from my own family? I turned my back. I cut ties. I refused to forgive. Not because I'm cold-hearted, but because I had been abandoned too many times in what was supposed to be my home. Too many times, I had tried to look the other way, only to see my son face the same pain I once endured. Times I've wondered if I was too harsh. But then I remember that Christmas Eve. Ethan opened an empty box, held that piece of paper in his little hands, read aloud the words, "Better luck next time," and my mother just turned away without a word. I know that if I didn't put a stop to it, my son would grow up in the same chains I had known, and I couldn't let that happen. What about you? If you were in my shoes, what would you do? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear your answer, not just because this is my story, but because sometimes one person's story is the story of so many others. If what I've shared resonates with you, please follow and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for staying until the end. See you again in another story, a story that's real, and one that will remind you that you deserve to be valued.
Did you enjoy my story? What a journey it has been. I truly wonder, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you have chosen silence to keep the peace, or would you have done what I did to reclaim your dignity? Let's meet in the comments below. I'm so curious to hear your thoughts. I'm reading every single one. Which city are you listening from tonight? If my story resonated with you, you can support me and help me bring more stories like this to the world by sending a super thanks. Your sweet support means the world to me and allows me to continue this journey with all of you. On the screen now, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend you watch next. There are so many more on my channel, each with its own lessons and triumphs. Don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell so you never miss a new chapter. Thank you for being here with me. Until the next story, with love and respect.